All right, I've been meaning to make some videos about our setup for a while. We're pretty happy with it. This is a 16-foot plus a V enclosed trailer. Okay, so we have 7-foot ceilings. It's about 7 feet wide inside, and then the wheel wells are on the outside. Okay, at the front, it's super simple. Nothing crazy in here. We added some power, but at the front, we have a little bit of a mess, but just kind of a standard workbench. So the big thing is, inside of here, 16 feet is gonna land you here with the ramp door open. The ramp door takes a bit of space, so 16 feet actually lands you about here. And 16-foot lumber is usually about 16 foot, ½ inch, 16 foot, 1 inch, somewhere in there. So we don't have the full 7 feet wide, but for the most part, we can run 16-foot lumber well up to here. Up to the front here. Now the cool stuff here is mostly in the electronics. So obviously you can see lights, and that's great for working in. We also have heat and shore power and that kind of thing, which I will show you. So on the outside, we have a male plug, and on the outside that looks like this. All right, just one of these no-go plugs. Good for shore power anytime you can plug in. If you've got an inverter on your truck, you can plug into that, and that is basically what runs this place. Of course, that is wired as 120 volt, and then we've got a plug-in on the bench top that is also 120 volt, and up here with all our junk, 120 volt. That is important to note because whatever you're plugged into is running all of those. If you're plugged into a 15 amp exterior plug on a house, if you pulled up to a job site, that is all the power you have. So you got to keep that in mind. You're still going to be tripping breakers and that kind of thing. The main thing that does for us is that runs our charger. So while we're driving down the road, the trucks have big enough inverters in them that we can run an extension cord from the truck to the trailer, and we do it all the time. And that keeps this topped up. And that's running our 100 amp hour 12 volt lithium battery, which is essentially a deep cycle. And everything in here runs on 12 volts. Here's our main kill switch. Okay, so I'm gonna turn this off. It kills the whole system, right? Nothing left. The battery is disconnected from everything except the charger. So to turn it on, it's that easy. Everything goes through the fuse panel, labeled. It's a bit of a mess, but it does work. The one thing is this bank of switches, courtesy of Amazon, all well and good, except that all runs off of one fuse. So we don't want to run anything too heavy duty, which we have a little bit. So you can see we have a few items. So desk light I'll leave on. Obviously that's this guy. Okay, and these are just LED strips. Cabin lights, we've wired in behind these panels. Okay, that all runs up to the top. You can see it comes out. There's a bullet connectors behind all that electrical tape, and just a frosted cover for diffusing the light a little bit. This guy runs on the truck's trailer harness, so if nothing else was on, this would still work if it were plugged in. That came with the trailer originally. Okay, heat we'll get to in a second. Cameras. We have cameras wired in a few spots on here. So all that is 12 volt power supplied to an Amazon RV backup camera kit. So we have a camera there. And if I can open this ramp door, we've got 2 on the back. Right, so we got this guy pointing down so we can see the back of the trailer when we're backing right up to things so we don't bump them. And this guy keeping an eye on traffic. And what that looks like is just a cigarette lighter plug here. This obviously would plug in your truck, right? So you turn that on. That's gonna come on in a second with a whole bunch of nothing because the cameras are off. So we come in here, turn these on, obviously pre-trip. This takes a second to load. And this is a bit of setup, of course, but you can see on the bottom right, that's keeping an eye on things inside. So even with lights off, it has the infrared camera. That's me. Hello. All right, turn it back on. And then over here, This is going to be our backup camera, so you can see the corners of the trailer in the bottom, so you can see exactly where you need to be. And then this guy here, it's currently facing my house, but that would be traffic, so you can keep an eye on that. And then this particular kit has an SD card slot, so you can have it running and you can be recording, and it just overwrites if it runs out of space. It's pretty cool. This is the MTVO A7, like really quite inexpensive, under a few $100s to get that set up. Plus, of course, your wiring and whatnot in the trailer, but very happy with it. This is the second kit. The last screen was stolen out of one of the trucks because it wasn't locked. And the new screen is a few years newer, no longer compatible, so I just ran around and changed the cameras. All of the old wiring was fine. They're just barrel connectors, right? Anyways, that's fantastic. And then for the exterior light, we actually wired this one up. It's kind of interesting, but it's just it's on the back door here. So we have it set up so it would face down onto the ramp, or we can turn it and face out sideways if needed, right? But it's pretty solid. Currently not working, so that's fun. Track that down in a few minutes. But yeah, the other good one we got in here is the heat, right? So we're gonna turn these off. This is your kind of standard Chinese diesel heater, right? So we're gonna turn this on, and that's gonna supply power to our thermostat over there, popped on. It also supplies power to our fuel gauge, okay? And there's our heater. So this is a diesel tank, and there's a fuel inlet outside there. Okay, this is just your standard fuel gauge. You need to wire it up to whatever your tank has in it. Like this one came with a gauge in it. You got to do some research on the correct resistive values and whatnot to make that work. Okay, and then we got our fuel hose running out through fuel filter, and that is our fuel pump, right? Goes up, burns fuel, goes out the exhaust. Really, that gets hot, and that goes out the floor. Okay. We have a heat shield there for obvious reasons, because that all gets cooking hot and we don't want things sitting against it. So you gotta keep some caution there. This is your combustion air intake. So what that means is this is pulling air from inside of the trailer and exhausting out the bottom. And that means the trailer is running on negative air pressure. Being an enclosed trailer, I'm really not that stressed about it because we've got a vent there, a vent at the back, and a giant air leak at the back there, as well as the man door here. Not a big deal. It pulls fan force air from here, blows it out there. Now to start this up, it's pretty simple. You just hold the power button on, and it's currently 7 degrees in here. And that's that. It's gonna take a few minutes to kind of warm up. It preheats with glow plugs. But the problem with this style of heater is these little pumps are an impact kind of pump. So it's just basically a little magnet that pulls a one-way check valve and a little plunger. It goes click, 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 and that's great. But when it's going click, 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 it is pulling our 12 volt, current in pulses, right? And that pulse makes the lights flicker because that is all on the same relatively light duty circuit here. I think it's a 10 amp fuse I got in there. And the voltage drop's fine. Like we've checked it. There's no voltage drop. That is just, it affects the lights enough. So the solution there was to put in voltage regulators on both of the light circuits, and that works fine. It's not perfect. You can still see a very slight amount of flicker in the lights, but it does work. There you go. You can hear it start now. And then shortly that will fire up, and away you go. And then we just added the 12 volt sockets down here for, just whatever you need to run. Fan for in the summer, it gets pretty warm in here, but that little heater is able to keep it about 25 to 30 degrees Celsius warmer than ambient air. So if it is 0 degrees outside, we could get 25 degrees in here. If it's minus 30, you'd be very excited to get it to 0 degrees in here. And for those of you that don't live in the cold climate, coming out of minus 30 into a 0 degree trailer is just fantastic. So it's good enough for what we're doing. The trailer's not insulated. This is a Forest River trailer. Holland is the brand they sell it as. It's got the ramp door, which is fine. It's on a spring system at the back and the top. There are, I think it's 1x1 construction. It's just like a plywood finish with these little slats over it. You can see that the trailer has seen some use, and what that means is that some of them are missing, right? Stuff like that. And it's fine. It's a work trailer. Not that worried about it. Overall, it's great. I'm very happy that I can walk through here with a hard hat and boots on, and it is no problem whatsoever. But it's not complicated. It is a very multi-use trailer. It could be a job shack. It could be, we use it mostly for storing material and hauling material on site. But I think simple is best when it comes to these, because you see a lot of guys running these as tool trailers, but you can't put anything in them, right? We've hauled just a massive amount of stuff in this over the years. We ended up putting down an epoxy floor after we had a diesel leak. We had to spread diatomaceous earth, and then we oil sealed the whole floor, and then we put down this epoxy garage kit that we had left over one day just to keep the stink out, because it smelled like diesel fuel. But it's good to go now. You can hear that heater's really kicking into high gear there. We can also turn it down. And all that's going to do is lower the heat output once it's running. But it's already putting some heat out, not a lot. This gets hot, not hot enough to burn you, but hot enough to be uncomfortable for sure. Anyways, we're going to kill that because the fan needs to blow for a little bit before we can cut power. What happens with these heaters is if I were to turn off the switch right now and cut the fan power, like the supply, that combustion air would backfeed through the intake and actually through the blower, and we would get a little bit of diesel exhaust in here. Not the end of the world. Open it up and it airs out, but it still stinks. So you got to make sure that fan can run for a minute or two before we come back and kill our power. We got a couple other items I'll show you guys over the next couple of videos with the work trucks. We got a couple different setups, show you what we like, what we don't like. But overall we got a pretty efficient system. We've been using it for years, so love to share it.